Welcome to Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here for another episode of Sloppy Spoilers. Tonight, as you can tell by the pic behind me, we're going to be talking about Top Gun Maverick. So let me bring my co-host on and we will get started. Welcome to David Nemesis Howard.
Yo, what's up? Watch this movie today. Looking forward to talking about it. I've got thoughts on both sides of the fence, so I think it should be an interesting discussion. Really looking forward to seeing what everybody has to say.
Welcome to Steve Shade Wing Sellers.
They came to snuff the rooster, but he ain't gonna die. That's really pretty much this movie in a nutshell. There's a lot of stuff going on with this film. I think it holds up mostly well with the original, but it's really one of those movies that's kind of like fun as long as you don't pick at it too closely. But we'll get into that.
Okay. Welcome to Jeff, Dr. Faye Bracey.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, whoever's responsible. I am beautiful. Don't hate me for it. This film, I'm looking forward to it. I think I actually like it better than the first film, but I don't know if that's because I think it's a better film or because I'm middle-aged and Tom is middle-aged, and this is about a middle-aged dude trying to be a little bit less middle-aged, and that's kind of how my life is nowadays.
All right, we're going to jump right into the things we have to say because I know we have multiple things to say. First thing I want to start off with is, funnily enough, related to what Bracey just said, and here it comes. Two things. First thing is, this is an old-fashioned feel-good movie, but it comes from both an actor and a time and a story world, and it got dropped at a time where we were more than okay with that, where we were more than hungry for, even if we pick it apart and certain things don't hold up, which is accurate, felt so good just to watch it, just to revisit the story world, just to follow the storyline, just to look at things that defy the laws of physics, but we're not gonna hold that too close because we enjoyed it so, because it was not woke, because it wasn't about identity politics. This was actually about the story and the character. And here's the thing, it was completely respectful of its source material. And it wasn't a situation where Maverick was trying to be torn down or anybody was trying to be torn down. Not the ghost of Goose, not his son who's in this movie, who was nailed to perfection by Miles Teller. I was like, well, I really believe you're Goose's kid. Not, with the memory of Meg Ryan, just, it wasn't that. But see, the spirit of the movie, that's what I keep trying to tell people. The spirit of the movie was about digging in and telling this particular story built on the original, and that was done excellently. And it felt so good to experience it. Like I said, when we get into the finer points of some places where the plot or the special effects or the thinking kind of falls apart, we don't really care because it wasn't necessarily about that. And you got to extend some grace in terms of your suspension of disbelief, because you wouldn't really have any movies, you'd have documentaries. If you want absolute realism, you have to make a documentary. If we're going to make a movie, then some stuff we're going to have to bend. So that's thing number one. And here's thing number two, which again is keying off of what Bracey just said, and that is that this thing was very Wrath of Khan to me. Very Wrath of Khan in this way. Wrath of Khan, the entire crux of that film was about Kirk turning 50 and about some things he did in his past coming back to haunt him. And that theme runs all the way through the movie, Wrath of Khan, about him realizing he's lived 5 decades, and about, does he want to be an admiral? Does he want to push a pencil, as it were? doesn't want to get back in the captain's chair. He needs glasses. He's allergic to Retinax 5. And then one of his greatest failures comes back to haunt him, Khan, who's full of fury and wrath. And then his other great failure, the son that he didn't raise because he and his mom didn't agree on a lifestyle choice. Well, that was this to me. It was Maverick coming back and facing the fact that I'm 50, or I'm in my 50s now. And it's not necessarily that my glory days are over, because the film proves that's not true. It's just that I'm in a very different stage of life. So who am I now? The funniest thing about life is that life is full of transitions. And every time you transition from one stage to another, you have to keep re-answering that question. Because when you're a baby, all you know is mama. But then you become a toddler. But then you start scooting around by yourself, and before you look up, you're 10. Then you go through your tween years and on and on and on. So every transition you make in life, when you go to a new stage, you have to say, okay, who am I now? Who am I at this stage? And I think that is the heart of this movie. Who is Maverick now? What is he about? What can he do? What's his level of influence? What are his choices? What's his impact? Where he is now. And the third thing I have to say before I throw it to my co-host, Steve already said it on Twitter, but I will repeat here. If this don't convince you that Tom Cruise is actually Hal Jordan, I don't know. If after this film you don't understand that Maverick is Hal and Cruise, it really is Hal in real life, falling off of airplanes, I mean, the man has no fear. The man doesn't want to leave anybody to die. The man has an unbreakable will. The man's not afraid of a challenge. He's driven by some mistakes in the past. You know, both Maverick, the character, and Cruise, the actor. How people can't see that this is Hal Jordan incarnate, I don't know.
And he's connected to an alien.
I never want to hear that Hal Jordan is a boring character ever again.
And he's connected to an alien power source through Scientology.
So the question is, could Tom Cruise play Hal Jordan right now?
He can play Hal Jordan in a film, and we've talked about it, you know, ad nauseum on Twitter.
Yeah, you'd have to focus on like Ion. You'd have to focus on Kyle, and then Hal Jordan
there has to be some new recruits. So basically,
I also pointed out that Jennifer Connelly could be Harold Ferris very easily.
Very easily. So Hal would be the new Abin Sur, except he doesn't necessarily have to die. But if he did, we could understand. But basically, like Abin Sur passed on the ring to Hal for the Silver Age adventures. Cruise could be in a movie where Hal is training Kyle, or turning over responsibilities for Earth to John or Guy, because maybe he's graduated, which he gets a cool, fancy uniform that doesn't look like Parallax. I mean, it could be done. It could easily be done. And Cruise has proven with this film that he could pull it off, and we believe it.
I would put Goldberg in some prosthetics and have him play Kilowatt. So,
Cruisers.
I would have Clancy Brown as the voice of Kilowatt. So yeah. So anyway. You know, again, this is a film that honors the source material. It deals with a central character at this stage of life. Who am I now? That's why the film is so relatable. If you were wondering why you got the feeling in your gut that you were right along with him and everything that he went through, it's because of the transition part of life. Saying, I've got to answer that question. Every time I have a 0 birthday, when I turn 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, however many years I get, I have to re-answer that question. Who am I now? And see, it's the sheer humanity of the character, in spite of the incredible physical feats. It's the sheer humanity of the character that roots this enough to make it relatable, and that's what made it so enjoyable. I just really, really enjoyed it. So let me throw it out to you guys. We'll do first impressions, and let's start with Steve.
This movie I felt did what we've talked about in regards to Aliens, which is it basically respected what happened in the first movie. You know, it built from the first movie in a logical way. It told a story that, you know, it wasn't like they were repeating themselves. It wasn't like they were just telling a story in that period just to make a film to make money. You know, it felt like they had a legitimate story to tell about who Maverick Mitchell was 30 some years on. And on top of that, they also did from Aliens what we talked about in there, which was they built goodwill, you know, because they respected the characters, because the characters all acted like themselves, because all the new characters were interesting and we liked them. You know, every single one of them, from Phoenix to Rooster. I mean, even Hangman, you know, who has his moments where he actually delivers and acts, likable. I mean, all of these characters we want to hang around with, and when they triumph, we triumph with them. And because it does such a good job of being a fun movie, of bringing us into these characters and into their lives and making us enjoy spending time with them. By the time that we start getting to the Death Star trench at the end of the movie, we are rooting for them to succeed. And when things go badly, it's like, oh my God, well, how are they going to get out of this? And because they built the goodwill, we don't really care that it's the Death Star trench. We're having a good time with these characters that we like, and we want them to get through their character arcs. We want them all to survive. We want Maverick and Rooster to have a reconciliation. And when it comes, it's very satisfying and enjoyable because the emotional arc was there, the emotional connections were there. It didn't feel like they were trying to subvert things. It didn't feel like they were trying to kill the past. There was none of that. It was just, it's basically the spirit of the first film brought into a new context with new people, with new characters and a new mission that they're dealing with. And because of that, it succeeds better than a lot of films and a lot of shows now that are just trying to take the IP and bastardize it so that they can make a quick buck. And I appreciate the work that Tom Cruise and all these other actors and the writers on it did to make it work and to make it feel, realistic, at least in terms of the characters. Even if there are certain elements that are a bit, shall we say, dicey if you really stop to think about it. Which I'm sure Nema's going to get into because he knows a lot more about that stuff. But I will say it was a fun movie, and it hit all the right emotional notes and all the right beats. And because of that, I can't fault it for any of its weaknesses. It just has it's just a feel good action movie, and that's what we want to see.
That's what we want to see. There's only one spot in the movie where I felt like the movie actually dragged. And you guys probably know what I'm talking about, but we'll talk about it when we get there. Okay, Bracy, general thoughts.
The thing I like best about this movie is I feel like I am actually watching a sequel to a film. I'm not watching a Star Wars that's being made for a new generation. I'm not watching a retcon of Star Trek that's been rebooted into something that you don't quite recognize. I'm not watching the ideals of a property being totally shifted to something else, as we saw with Picard versus the Next Generation. I feel like I'm stepping back. Like I've gone away. Like me and Maverick hung out in the 90s, and then like, oh, Maverick's in town. I came back and see how he's doing. I feel like that's the experience I've had. I feel like I'm seeing the same guy. A lot of his life was actually kind of predictable, kind of what you would expect out of a guy who's named Maverick, even with him, learning a few life lessons at the end of the first film. And I like this continuation and progression of the character and the characters related to him. Seeing what became of Goose's family, seeing what became of Iceman, seeing what became of these other folks. And again, it's, I watched that movie at a certain age, and I'm watching this movie at an age that's appropriate to where Tom Cruise's Maverick is in the film. And so both of these films resonate with me at different times of my life. And that just, it just makes it as enjoyable, or maybe in some ways even more enjoyable, as I said, than the previous film to me, which is fairly rare. You only tend to get that with things like Alien 2 and Godfather 2 and things like that. It's a rare accomplishment to find a film that is even more satisfying than the movie that kicked it all off. I especially like how seeing how Maverick, because he does have that Kirk syndrome, he's that guy who's got to have the action, he's got to have the thrill to to make up for the things that he didn't pursue in life, like love, family, children, career, all of that. For him, it's always about being in that cockpit, like Kirk has to be in that captain's chair. And the one of the most interesting things for me is him coming face to face with this age's Maverick, and kind of realizing, yeah, I was kind of a dick back then. And so there's that mirror that he has to look into with Hangman, and the relationships between the cast were really good. I like the chemistry. Yeah, like you said, the guy playing Goose's son is so spot on. Rooster nails it, and it's just very enjoyable. The cast is all likable. They don't do anything to muck with that. They have a pretty clear, like you said, feel good kind of story to tell, and they tell it. And it's weird watching something that's so 80s and not 80s at the same time, where we just had a glut of those kind of movies, but they still work and they still appeal. And I will say, just to show you how ready the audiences are for just good, solid entertainment, the movies that have made the most money since theaters opened back up after COVID have been Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Top Gun Maverick, because they're just fun movies.
That's right. That's right. And that's why we go to the theater. That's the whole point. I put on Twitter a sequel, not a bashful. So I tagged you guys in that. All right, Nims, general thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with the movie being fun at all. I mean, when I watch this movie, I kind of watch it on three levels. Obviously, just watching it from as a movie-going perspective, just for the story. It's got plenty of feels. It does have feel-good moments at the end. I thought that the progression was good. I thought it was a sequel, like all of you guys said. I thought the guy that played Rooster, like DT said, looks as a dead ringer for Goose's son. Unbelievable. I thought that they integrated the presence of female pilots in very well. She wasn't over the top. She was believable. So all of that made a lot of sense. It didn't distract from the movie. Jennifer Garner in the movie and her past relationship, which we've never seen on screen, felt natural. It felt like something that could have happened in the intervening years. So all of that was really good. I'd say if they missed a step story-wise at all, it was the fact that they didn't deal with the aftermath of the bird strike and the near ground collision during training, but that would have hearkened. I think that would have been too on the point back to the original Top Gun, and it would have subtracted from the pacing of the film even more. So, I can understand why it was probably cut out if it was in there in the first place. The second level I watch it on is a real technical level, and we could get into that later if you're interested. I mean, and it's the same way that I watch Rambo. It's like I watch Rambo movies. I love Rambo movies. They're fun. They're great to sit down with a bunch of buddies and just enjoy. But when you start to really look at them as someone who has done this kind of stuff, you're like, yeah, that's ridiculous. That is really ridiculous.
I just got to say about Rambo 2, backblast area clear.
Yeah. I mean,
Jim knows what I'm
talking about. I can't
about.
watch Community for the same reason. I know too much about what goes on in there, and I can tell you where this stuff just makes no sense. But
yeah, so there's all that in there, and the only thing I will say, if we decide you want to go there, and if we don't, I'm fine with that as well. Is that I was an air defense officer in the Army, so all of this stuff with air defense, I'm just sitting there going, "Excuse me," So. And then the last part is just looking at it from a military standpoint. And there's small little things here and there that just don't make a whole lot of sense. But once again, it's like, except to people who have been in there and decide to dwell on it, it takes nothing away for the general viewing audience. They're never going to know that the chances that a captain who is the equivalent of a full bird colonel being able to pull someone's appointment to Annapolis are about zero. It doesn't matter what he's done, So, I mean, and that's just one example. But does the general audience care about that? No. Does making that possible add to the story? Yes. So, you know what? Hey, all you military people, sit down, shut up, and enjoy the movie. So that's what I did. So it was a good movie. I enjoyed it.
Cool. Also, I will say maybe, did you hear me say maybe we can give Miles Teller a little bit of redemption for Fan Stick with this film.
Wasn't
Yeah, that movie didn't fail because of Miles Teller. That movie
Yeah.
failed because it was badly written and badly conceived on every single level. It wasn't his fault.
Yeah, but he was still in it, and I still see Ertats Reed when I look at him, so I'm trying to move away from that. So I'm trying to get
He's a very good actor in a lot of other things. So yeah, and he was great. He has that Anthony Edwards look in this movie.
Yeah,
Although I do have to say, the one last thing I took away from it, and I'm sure just going to chuckle at it for Jeff too. I said this to Steve offline. I said, you know, I thought that they captured the differences between a naval aviator and say a grunt or an army person very well. You know, naval aviators are on the beach playing football before the mission and doing all this stuff. But then when they get up the mission, they're on pucker factor for the whole time. Versus Army, we don't get into that Army football, but it's like it's a lot of boring sitting around for some very intense moments. You know, so
hurry up and wait, man.
Hurry up and wait before fighting. So it's a very different experience. But I thought that they captured that pucker factor, and for all of you who don't know what pucker factor is, it has to do with the sphincter of your bottom when you're stressed. That's all I'm going to say. So, but yeah, that pucker factor when you are in a combat situation, I thought was captured perfectly when Maverick really doesn't know if he's going to come back or not, and he tells his crew chief that. So, you know, so I thought that was good. I really enjoyed that part.
All right, diving into the details, it's so much like Wrath of Khan. Maverick has been avoiding promotion because he still wants to be a test pilot. He's actually been testing the hypersonic Darkstar jet. But here comes Ed Harris doing what Ed Harris always does, which is shut you down some kind of way. And so, you know, it's the whole bureaucratic, we don't need to put any more money into this. You know, if this thing doesn't break Mach 10, it's not worth investing in, and nobody can actually do that and survive. The plane can't actually survive it. No human pilot could survive it. And whenever you have a movie that keeps saying, nobody's ever done this, this can't be done, that's movie speak for the protagonist is about to do that.
Yeah.
So, like when I watched Avatar, as soon as they said, no one's ever ridden the big red beastie beast, I was like, oh, okay. So we know what's coming, but that's all right. So, so he's like, you know, the first real tension of the movie is you've got to break Mach 10, and you know you've got to survive, or the plane has to survive, or something has to happen, or you can forget it. No more funds for you, blah blah blah. And so Maverick does it, but of course it cost the plane. I still think it was like because Tom Cruise and you know Wolverine and Maverick and Batman, they got that healing factor. Because I'm like, how did your brain not explode? How do you have ears? How is your frontal lobes not jelly? I'm not understanding, but okay. So we'll
Plot armor.
What'd you say?
Plot armor.
Plot armor.
That's right, plot armor.
Batman's true superpower.
That's right. So again, we'll let that one go. And so for his punishment, he needs to be completely grounded, but he decides to we find out a few minutes later under the guise of Iceman, who's now an admiral commander, goes back to Top Gun because guess what he's got to do? He's got to, I mean, it's a very 80s plot. He's got to train the next generation of the best because we have an impossible mission. So again, you know, it's not anything deep or overly complex in terms of what's driving everything, but it's like it's the old Star Trek trope of no matter what happens, there are no ships in the quadrant but the Enterprise. Yeah. So this is the trope of, you know, we know that something's going to go down with some new tech and some new bogies, and nobody can fight them but this group. And so Maverick has to train this group, and he's going to need 10 more, 10 times the time he has. So he's going to have to do it in a tenth of the time. So, you know, we see what's going. But that's what lets you know how much fun the movie is to watch, because you can predict the beats and still like it and still enjoy it. So that's the basic setup. And so where we get into, and I'm going to listen to Nims and Bracey on this one, where we get into what eventually leads to the Death Star run at the end, we get into the physical setup of how to actually approach the enemy's camp, infiltrate, drop the bombs, and then basically fly, at ridiculous angles to get out at ridiculous speeds. And I'm like, maybe Superman could do that, but a plane, that kind of thing. And so that's really the setup for watching Maverick do what he does. But I have to say, before I throw it to my co-host, I have to say, even though the kind of stuff he did was just out of the box, I mean, he broke the ceiling. He did his normal, anti-grav upside down trick. He did a whole bunch of stuff that he shouldn't have been doing, especially trying to train them, going against his orders constantly, which again is something Hal Jordan would do, as Steve pointed out, to try to say, Maverick, you need to teach them how to think. It's like, no, they don't need to think. It needs to be second nature. It's almost like martial arts in the sky. You need to be able to react. You can't think, because if you think, you're dead. That kind of thing. And so that's the whole use the force, Luke, use your gut.
That's what training's all about, to give you those reflexes so you don't have to think.
Right, that kind of thing. And once again, for me personally, that was so much fun to watch. It was so much fun to watch the conflict between him and John Hamm, and every suit that was telling him, you can't do it that way. You're a relic. You're here as a favor. You're disrespectful. You haven't learned your lesson. The only reason you haven't been put out to pasture yet is because you got friends in high places. I can't believe you're this full of yourself at this age or whatever. And Maverick is just like, yeah, well, whatever. He eventually is my way or the highway, just like Hal would do, because he's like, they're not going to survive if they're thinking, which of course turns out to be right. So I want to hear what our military people have to say about the actual logistics of this mission. Everything you want to give, trajectory, speeds, G-forces, effects on the brain, everything. So let's break it down in a real world sense. Nims.
Sure. The first thing I'll say is that the whole first 15, 20 minutes of the movie is a Department of the Navy pitch for more funded that I'm sure the Air Force was really pissed off about. Because
now, us lay people just missed all that, right?
Yeah. The whole part where Ed Harris is talking about pilots are archaic and drones are the future. And then they mention the fact, which is true, that certain countries have surpassed us technologically because we haven't really put as much money into R&D and keeping up our fleet and everything like that. So, I mean, a lot of that is very true. And the Navy has lost a lot of budget, as well as, DOD in general. And but the whole drone thing, the debate versus drone, manned versus unmanned aircraft is huge. And the number one purveyor of unmanned aircraft is the Air Force. I mean, they have the capability of being able to strike from a long ways away with drones, so that naval aviation could possibly just go away, because that's one of the benefits.
In the face.
Yeah. So, and there's always, just for everybody who doesn't know, there is always this huge warfare between the different branches of the military over funds. And, and that is politics, and it's, I'm not going to bore you with it, but it definitely exists. So, I mean, I thought that was really interesting. I thought that it was interesting that was in the movie, because there was a lot of truth to it, a lot of truth about that debate. As far as the actual attack scenario, I guess I would really want to talk about it from the defender's point of view. There's a couple things that, going under the radar is very is effective, but that usually works when you have the ability to put some sort of terrain feature between yourself and the radar, and you can have the radar looking at different different angles and stuff like that to try and cover that, but it needs line of sight. Going down into this canyon, though, I mean, the first thing you do as an air defense officer is that you look for blind spots in your radar coverage, in your air coverage, and that is a big old huge red flag blind spot right there that's leading right to the target. So the first thing I would do as an air defense officer is put some guns down there. or something like that.
Put them right on the floor.
Yeah. So I would put some point defense guns so that the minute that Mav and his team came around the corner, they'd be staring down a 30 millimeter cannon that's firing 1,200 rounds a minute, so, and it would just shred them to pieces if I was developing an air defense strategy, but this is technical stuff. But the other thing is that, we see it a lot, and Hollywood's not real accurate, and that's fine. But, a lot of modern SAMs won't be fooled as easily by those countermeasures. And this is stuff that the public probably doesn't want to see, because I think what you were saying is that it would make a very boring movie. Because if we were doing this for real, you would need more than 4 planes. You would probably need special forces on the ground to be the laser designators. They would have gone in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks ahead of time and hidden that whole time and then lased the target.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have to try and get your lays on target within 2 seconds while you're going through a steep dive like that. You would have had multiple strike team. Would have had his whole strike group with multiple strike teams. One would have been responsible for radar jamming. Another would have anti-radar missiles, which would be air-to-surface missiles to take out radar emplacements and stuff. You would have had someone air domination. So even if they had 5th-generation fighters, if you send 2 wings of F-18s after them, they'd probably still be in trouble. You'd have a couple of those E-2s up for air support or for your radar air picture. And you'd have a whole strike group, a carrier strike group doing this mission. But that's expensive. It doesn't give your actors a chance to shine, because now instead of just 4 actors doing this heroic thing, you've got, 50 planes making an attack, And so that's where I think Hollywood versus realism comes in. So, I mean, that's just the stuff I saw. But the actual strike profile, I think it's reasonable. Whoever that last strike team would be, it would be very difficult. I would hope that if you took out the forces, you wouldn't have to do some of those maneuvers like that and break your plane. But I'll let Jeff talk a little bit more about that. And then probably he knows a lot about the physiology of flying, stuff like that as well. So.
All right,
yes, surprisingly, not Air Force, Army National Guard, but I have always had a passion for the romanticism of air combat and dogfights from biplanes onward. So I have studied up a little bit on that, and just for quick add, it's really beautiful to see a P-51D Mustang as a Maverick's toy, the air superiority fighter of its day. Gorgeous to see one of those up in the air. So I got to mention this from the physics standpoint, just because this was fun. They actually fixed something a little bit in the first Top Gun. They have Maverick fly upside down over his opponents like he does in this movie, but the way they framed the shot in the previous film, these 2 planes were like this, almost campy to campy, which doesn't work because your tail fins, your stabilizers, are going to collide and kill everybody. And so here, at least, they did it in a wide shot, and you can see the planes actually had the proper, although still very dangerous, amount of clearance to make that work. So I think somebody might have let them know, like, hey, if you're going to do this, fix it a little. Thinking about the tactical run of this, I honestly, I don't think that was possible with F-18s. F-18s are not super new birds anymore. They're getting a little long in the tooth as well. Not as long in the tooth as the Tomcat, the F-14 that Tom flew in the previous movie and this one. But, that's the whole point they were making. We're dealing with 5th-generation fighters versus the F-18s. And the F-18 is a good bird, but it is not up to this sort of task. And one of the things that makes these fighters, and I was really excited to see this, maneuverability of these fighters, these things that we've had since we started picking up things like the F-22 Raptors and the F-35s, is some of these guys have vector thrust, which basically means it's almost like having a space plane. Your rear engines can point, and they can nozzle down and open up wide, and they can channel their thrust, and that gives them really interesting angles. And so I love Tom's moment, although he should have known this plane was capable of this sort of thing, if it's 5th generation, but like when he fires at it and it spirals out of the way and swoops back around him like a boomerang, he's like, what the hell was that? That was for the audience. People in the know knows, like, Yeah, there's planes that can do that. And what was really cool, even at Top Gun, Maverick pulled off a maneuver that was developed by the Russian pilots, which was the Cobra, which was just kind of like slamming on the brakes. And they call it the Cobra because you slam on the brakes, you hood up, and then you strike back down like a Cobra. Beautiful to see that on screen, too. But I think in order to make this attack run work, they wanted it to, given, and I have to go by the computer models, and they might have been fudging the distance a little bit on that. But I don't think you have the room necessary to pull off that maneuver unless you have vector thrust capable aircraft, which can perform an aerobatic maneuver, unlike the older planes that we have. And I did think it's kind of cute that Rooster's like, oh man, this plane is so old. It's like, if we got a good plane, we keep that sucker in the air for 20, 30, 40, sometimes even 50 years. The F-15 Eagle is still flying, and that thing has been around since the 70s. It's a badass machine. And so, only recently being overshadowed by the 22 Raptor. So I think from that aspect, that's not very feasible. Like Nim said, you want to have different point defense systems that are going to protect your blind spots, and even flying nap of the earth like that. I still think if they used a more modern plane, that would have made things a lot easier. They could have cruised in with their stealth technology. They wouldn't have had to go as fast. They wouldn't have had to go as low, and they could have just been giving the finger to those SAMs and cruise on over and hit the target. And also, like he said, you would have had snipers, spotters in there weeks ahead of time, and they would have been painting the target for you. What was that one movie? It was Harrison Ford, and they had guys fighting a drug war in Colombia. The president was allowed to talk about it. If you
Clear and present danger.
Yes, thank you. Clear and present danger. And they actually, I believe it's that film. They show where you get a couple of snipers in there, and one of them laser paints the target, and then the bird comes in, drops its payload on the drug kingpin's house. So you've got a coordinated thing going on, because our typical rules of engagement is we like to overperform. We want 3-to-1 odds or better if we can get it. So this the minimal strike team sort of thing that works if you're doing like a special forces sort of op when you need to be quiet and sneaky. That's not usually how we go. I forget the name of the movie also, but there was a great line in a movie where Bruce Willis is talking about how the Army operates, and it's like, we're a broadsword, not a scalpel. And that's generally how the military is, unless you have those small strike units. And that's just not generally how we operate when we're using big tech and big machinery and stuff like that.
Probably. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, please.
I was going to say probably the other thing they did, one thing I did appreciate was the Tomahawk missile launch to take out an asset. But probably what they would have done simultaneously with that would have been to stage a fake attack somewhere further away to draw off the air cover. So, I mean, there's a whole host of things.
Yeah.
But as we're talking about this, nobody wants to see all that.
Yeah, it's like when you film, this is just like when you film martial arts. If you watch real fighting, the blows are short, sharp, to the point. When you film them, people who don't know how to, who haven't trained, who haven't been faithful watchers of combat sports for a long time, they won't pick up on all the subtleties. They won't pick up on the action. They won't pick up on the technical expertise. So you have to show all these windups. You have to show all this flourish. You have to show all this big action so people can enjoy it. And that goes for that. That goes for sometimes gunplay, sword fighting. And it's the same thing here. We're just seeing it in the air. We can't show you how it really looks because reality, it's very exciting if you're in the cockpit. You got your pucker factor, wherein if you're going to blown out of the sky. But if you're watching it, it looks really boring. So Hollywood does what Hollywood needs to do and makes it pretty and exciting and thrilling.
Plus,
and they put it to really cool music.
Yeah, plus in reality, the fact is that a modern SAM system, they're all dead. So
yeah, I don't know about the Dark Star. Just the I'm aware that people have taken more than 9 Gs in flight, but the Dark Star thing is I don't know if that sort of thing is possible. I'm sure they're working on stuff like that, and who knows what DARPA's cooking up. But you know,
I'm sure.
we eventually break every record sooner or later.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but who wants to watch a movie where, they've made movies like this, but who wants to watch a feel-good military movie where all four of the pilots maybe achieve their objective and then all get shot down and killed? So,
Yeah.
Right. That's right. Nobody wants that kind of an ending, except some films don't understand that, like Alien 3. Okay, anyway.
They can't all be Saving Private Ryan.
So next, let's move on to the biggest moral dilemma, or one of the biggest moral dilemmas, but I think it's a big moral dilemma, and I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about it. We find out, first of all, that Maverick reconnects with his former girlfriend, Penny Benjamin, played by the lovely Jennifer Connelly, who's married to Paul Bettany in real life, the Vision.
Did I say Jennifer Garner before?
Yeah, you did.
Sorry. I am so sorry. Good Lord. I apologize, Jennifer Connelly, please.
Okay. Jennifer Connelly, whose career we've been watching since Labyrinth. So we've been checking out all her movies since all the way back then. So he's got the crack team, and so he meets Penny, and her bar is called the Hard Deck, and of course she embarrasses him, but I guess it's all in good fun. But here's the thing. Here's what I want to hear you guys' thoughts on. I'll give you mine, then I want to hear what you guys think. We find out that basically Maverick was trying to keep his promise to Goose's wife, Carol, played by Meg Ryan in the first film, who we also found out is passed on. She's dead in this film. She made Maverick promise to keep Goose's son from flying. And so Maverick Maverick blocked his application to the Naval Academy, and that ended up setting back his career in a significant way. And Maverick is carrying that burden throughout the whole film. And so when I saw that, first of all, I think that's great writing because it gives you, we have an external dilemma, we have the goal to achieve, but we have an internal moral dilemma about doing the right thing. And so I thought about, what would I do in a situation like that? I actually do know what I do, but everybody's different. What I would do in a situation like that is I never would have promised the mama that I wasn't going to let the son fly, because that's ridiculous. If he's going to be a pilot, if he wants to be in the service, he's going to be in the service, and I can't stop that. Yeah. And trying to slow him down is just going to do what it did, make him angry and bitter, and probably more determined to go after that goal. And even though your husband died tragically, and it's the one part of Top Gun I can't watch because I hate the bone crunch of his neck crunching up against I can't stand it, can't watch that. I've lived long enough to know that, life is going to go on in some kind of way, even though that feels harsh, that feels tough, or if you don't feel like you got requisite justice or closure for something that happened in your life, it's really hard to hear somebody say that life is going to continue to move forward and you have to let people keep living, especially if you grieve until your grave. If something happened and you held on to it and you basically said, this hurt me so bad, I'm going to hurt till I die. And then you try to say, I want everybody else to act a certain way, that kind of thing. I would already know that is ridiculous and could not possibly happen in real life. So I personally would have told her, I would have said, I really understand what you're saying, but I can't promise you that I'm not going to let the kid fly. How could I stop him? Why would I stop him? If he's got it in his blood, there's nothing you can do. It's like people that try to quit the music industry and they always get drawn back. It's like people that have a strong artistic streak and they all get drawn back. It's like people who love comics, no matter what happens, no matter what we've been through, no matter what the industry does, you can't beat the love of comic books out of people like us. We'll just find new ways to enjoy, create, or whatever. See, so since I know that, I would have told her the truth. I would have said, I'm sorry, but I can't make that kind of promise. So that's my approach. So I want to hear what you guys think. What do you think about the moral dilemma of Maverick promising Goose's widow that he would try his best to stop the kid from flying and blocking his application and slowing his career down, but not eliminating his career? So he's still out there flying. He's just not where he could have been by now. if, without Maverick's interference, because I would have known that was inevitable. Then the kid's going to hate you. How could he not hate you? And you're not going to make him stop flying. And sometimes he'll fly just to spite you, because that's what people do when you try to take their dream from them. When you try to tell them, you can't be who you are, you can't do what you love because it might hurt me too much. Eventually they're going to say, Mama, I love you, but I'm sorry. I got to fly or do whatever. I have a cousin who has a son that's a pilot. And we say, well, we're going to pray and God's going to be with him. Because, God's got to be with you in whatever environment you're in, land, sea, or air. But the point I'm trying to make is we can't ground him because he wants to fly. So tell me what you guys think. Start with Steve on this.
Yeah, I will. I agree with you in terms of, whether he should have taken the promise or not. I don't think he should have. But I'm going to go more into what I think is like one of the real issues that is not really openly addressed. It's kind of alluded to. They dance around it. And that is, I think the reason why Maverick took the promise is because he is haunted by the death of Goose. And his worst fear is that the same thing that happened to Goose is going to happen to Rooster. And we see this over and over. I mean, Ice sees it. When Mav goes into Ice's office, it's like, you have to let him go. You have to let him go. This is what he wants to do. You got to let the man fly. And it took him, and it takes him a while to learn to do this. And you also see that he's still struggling with letting him go when he's talking to Cyclone, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna consider this guy to let him fly on the mission, and it's just like, please don't make me make this choice. Please don't make me make this choice. But the thing of it is like, it's not your choice. It's the kid's choice. The kid wants to fly. He is his father's son. And Maverick kind of dances around it saying, oh, well, he's not ready. Well, that's clearly nonsense because he's definitely ready at the end of the movie. And you might say, okay, maybe he's got problems blocking him. He has his father's, sense of reluctance. He's not like Maverick who, runs straight into everything, and naturally does things, by instinct. He has to learn to stop thinking. But that's something that Maverick could have taught him, and that he does eventually, get through to him, by the end of the movie. So, I mean, clearly this whole thing is an excuse that he's telling himself to justify why he's doing what he's doing. But what he's doing is he's hurting this kid. And what's worst of it is that Maverick, being who he is, he has nothing left in terms of family. His family is Goose's family, Rooster, and I guess you could argue Penny and her daughter at the end of the movie, but so the closest thing you have to a son is this kid, and you're going to set him back, and you're not even going to properly explain why you did what you did. And I think this is what really is grating on Rooster, in addition to the fact that the application was denied. It's that Maverick is not the kind of person who is going to give you a heart-to-heart about what he's doing and why. This is a guy who is an action-oriented person, who just gets it done, and he just won't tell you anything. And I think that this is another bit of the big problems coming between him and Rooster is, because Rooster is like, I looked up to you all my life, and you're blocking me from doing what I want to do with my life. Why are you not talking to me about it? And why can't we have a discussion about this? So, I really feel like there are kind of issues with both sides. I think that, Rooster is definitely kind of a brash kid, who I think in some ways takes after Maverick in the wrong ways. But on the other hand, Maverick is just somebody who is, causing some of his own misfortunes with his relationship. And he's just not good at this. He's not good at being a father figure, and yet that's what he has to be for this kid. And he lets him down more than once. And it's not until the end where, Rooster really sees what his father had to do for him, why they were forged in fire and why they had this brother-like bond. that he finally begins to see, okay, maybe Maverick had, reasons other than what he was telling me. But, it shouldn't have to come to that because, Maverick should have handled the situation better than he did. And unfortunately, it is what it is. That having been said, I really do love the arc that they have and the conflict that they have. It is a really, really great dynamic. And the way that ultimately it is resolved, I think for the most part is well done. I just wish that they had openly addressed the fact that Maverick is really driven by guilt, and this whole thing is affecting that relationship, and yet no one calls him out openly on it, and I think that's a shame.
Well, I'll call him out. When people get in certain stages of life, they tend to do that. They tend to have, especially people that took a lot of risk when they were young, they're now all shocked and appalled that other young people want to take risks because they're young. That's always amazed me. Ever since I was very, very little. It's not that I don't understand the wisdom of experience and you don't want me to make the mistakes that you made, but apple, tree. The apple don't fall far from the tree. So if when you procreate, you are reproducing a form of yourself in your child. So why you are surprised and angered that your child in some ways would be just like you has always amazed me since I was a little boy. So even though I understand, again, the moral implications of this kind of thing, thinking that you could stop Rooster, Goose's son, from wanting to fly and wanting to be like you, and all you've ever done is risk your life every time you climb into a cockpit. You don't care if it's the last time, you're going to do what you want, and then you're going to stifle somebody else with that same kind of drive. Yeah, no, sorry. Can't. I know it's tough. I know it's hard, but can't get with that. Okay, Nims, what do you think?
Yeah, first of all, I would say with the promise, for me, I think it would really depend on when the request was made. If she was on her deathbed and it was the last thing she was worrying about before she died, I might find a way to say something that would ease her mind so that she could die at peace with no intention of doing it.
Yeah, just say like, I'll take care of him.
Yeah.
Nice and ambiguous.
Yeah. That said, I do think that it's interesting what you guys were talking about just now on a couple different levels. I have been in the situation with my own children and with other people's children who people have come to me. My wife really didn't want any of our children to go into the military or to West Point. And that's a whole other story. But she respected the kids' decisions. And I've had other people come to me either trying to convince their kids to go to West Point or to convince their kids not to go to West Point or to be in the Army. And my attitude has always been, I sit down and I tell you the complete, unvarnished, whole truth about what it's like to go to West Point and be an Army officer. And if you still want to do it after that, good luck. I will support you if that's what you want to do. But I think that is the most important thing. I think if Maverick had been a true father figure, he would have sat down and explained exactly what it is you're getting into. If you're going to be a naval aviator, if you're going to go to Annapolis. I don't think Maverick went to Annapolis, but I don't know if they ever addressed that. But that gets to the second point, which I think is a larger point. You were talking about him as a father figure. The fact is, and I'm just going to put this out there, Maverick is an incredible pilot. He's a pretty shitty officer. He really is.
Yeah. He is.
He couldn't lead his way out of a wet paper bag. And I think that's best exemplified when you have Hangman needling Rooster about Goose's death, and Maverick sees what's going on. An officer who commands respect because he's an officer would have said one word and every one of them would have locked up. Period. End of story. Done. That's it. Maverick lost control of that situation and never got it back. Never. So Maverick can lead by example by being the benchmark that he's trying to get them all to get to. But as far as an actual leader to inspire people, to motivate people, to demand respect, he's not a very good officer. And I think that tells in the way he handled himself as a father as well. That is not his personality. his skills to be able to do those types of things, he hasn't reached. Maybe what we're seeing from Maverick at the end is that he's finally grown up to that point, because I don't think he's ever reached that point where, to one extent or another, every man gets to the point in their life, once you become a man, that you become content in who you are, and you demand from those who should respect you the respect that you are deserved. So,
okay, not that I disagree with any of that, but again, I will also say I agree with, especially part about him not being a good officer. It's just that personality traits tend to be unilateral. And so if you are a rule breaker, it's hard for you to turn around and tell other people to respect the rules.
Mm-hmm.
You won't have a lot of conviction when you say that, because you don't respect them.
well,
And that's why they're not really going to listen to you.
and your subordinates will immediately pick up that you're a hypocrite.
Right. So that's
and that comes to play by the end of the film. Like, what are you doing here? What were you doing? I'm saving your life. Yeah. You told me not to think.
That kind of comes along with being that kind of person, because you can't have it both ways. You can't be, it's my biggest problem with Batman, and y'all know I love Batman. It's my biggest problem with Batman as a character is the way he thinks that he can dress up like a vigilante, scare people to death, and beat them into the hospital, but nobody else can do that. Really? Because he just loses his mind when somebody else does the same thing he's doing.
That's one of the reasons that he and Dick get in so many arguments. So.
Yeah, I mean, like he straight up calls Gotham his city. If you want to work in his city, you've got to get your license from Batman.
Right, who works outside the law and dresses up like a bat and uses his money to, beat the crap out of criminals and completely bypasses the justice system and takes the law in his own hands. But he's got a code, and you can't do that because it's not right when you did it.
Yeah, but
anyway.
But to answer your first question, the original question, if she was on her deathbed, I'd find a way to make it work. If it was before that and she wasn't dying, I would have been like, look, I'll sit down. We'll have a beer, or if he's on whatever it is we're going to do, and we're going to have a talk.
You're going to have a heart-to-heart, yeah.
But then you're going to have to respect his life too, so.
That's right. I'll say this before I throw it to Bracy. When you get with someone because they're exciting, you don't then get to complain about the excitement in their life. It's like when I hear women say they'll never date a musician again. I'm like, why did you date them the first time? Oh, you dated him because they were exciting, because you liked the way he played his guitar, because you liked the way everybody swooned on him, or say you liked the way he was the center of attention. You liked all that. And then you get in his life and you find out he's got to practice 6 to 8 hours a day. You find out he's got a bond with his Axis guitar. You find out that you're not the first girl that crushed on him. Now you're mad. See, I don't understand stuff like that. I don't understand how everything about someone that attracted you to them, when you get in their life, now you mad.
That's because you're just seeing the surface.
What'd you say?
That's because they're just seeing the surface details.
I guess I've just never understood that. Whatever you do in terms of getting with any situation, you got to take everything that come along with it. So if that's what you want, then you don't just get the parts of it that you like. You got to take everything that come along with it. Go ahead.
I think that's part of a whole larger discussion about what men and women do in relationships.
Well, I'm just using that as an example, but I'm just saying it never fails. You want to be first lady at a church. Okay, you want to be up front. You want all the attention. You want those nice clothes. You don't want to be married to the top man. Okay, you know what that means? That means that everybody in the church is flirting with him. That means he's always got his eyes on his vision. That means you have to share him with the world. It's like Lois being married to Superman. It means phone calls at 2:00 in the morning. It means he's got to do all the funerals. That's what that means. Not just the parts you like. That's my point. Whatever example I'm using, that's my point.
I guess what I would say was just I giggle at this because I see it now with my nephews, and everybody is like, men think that the women in their life will always be that 19-year-old girl you met, and then women always think that they could change their man into somebody completely different, So it's like both are unreasonable. So
yeah, men think women won't change, and women think men will. All right, Bracy, what do you think about this whole moral dilemma? What would you do? Let's say you
Oh,
have
geez.
blood and you have the death of a fellow comrade behind you, and that mom comes to you and says, Jeff, I want you to promise me you're not going to let happen to my son what happened to his dad. What would you do?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to get off topic a little bit because you guys opened up that can of worms, so I'm going to dig into it a little bit. We see these examples like this. We see Meghan Markle, who wanted to be a princess, so she married an English prince, not knowing what that entailed. That was a whole thing. That's a whole lifestyle, a whole commitment that she doesn't understand. She's got the fairy tale idea of like, this is what a princess is. And then you find out being a princess is a full-time job. You know, you're a diplomat, you're an attaché, you're a ruler, you're all this stuff, you're a public face. So we've got that. And thinking about like, I used to do a lot of fun things when I was younger. And I stopped doing those things when I realized I was probably going to be with my wife for the rest of my life. Because all of a sudden, everything I wanted to do, bungee jumping, skydiving, any crazy dangerous thing I wanted to do, I wasn't thinking about like, well, it's my life. I can do what I want. And, I'd take the risk, awesome if it works out. If it doesn't, well, that sucked. But when you start thinking about other people, you start pulling it back. You start reining it back in. You start taking those chances. At least most mature adults, when they start thinking of themselves as a pair or a pair bond or a potential partner, marriage, however you want to phrase that. But that's not Maverick. Maverick is always that guy, and we perfectly see this, even though he is older and more mature in a lot of ways. Because he did learn something by the end of the first Top Gun. What does he have to do? What does he have to do? He's like got to push the dart just that little bit extra, which ends up being catastrophic for the plane, which was already on the verge of failure. He's always got to go the extra mile. He always has to be the Maverick. Mm-hmm. He's a man of action, whether that's in a cockpit or with a lady. He is the man of action, and he has to basically kind of be forced to a point where we're getting ready to put you out in the pasture, that he really legitimately thinks about settling down and trying to straighten out some things in his life. And he's not even cognizant of like the time that's passed, because he lives an action-oriented life. Like, he meets the daughter in the bar. It's like, was that 3 years ago? Geez, you got big. Stuff like this catches him off guard because he lives a fast-paced life and time flies. What I really liked, and this is so commendable for the writers, that Rooster didn't hate him because Goose died. That's not why he hated him. That would have been the easy thing to write. It's something we've seen a million times before. But what did they do? They made that deathbed, presumably, promise, don't let my son do this. And man, what a great dynamic that created. Now, the movie is expecting that that you've seen the previous film, because like Steve said, like they didn't really touch on the guilt. For anybody who's seen the previous movie, you just feel the guilt all throughout the film. It's there, you're well aware, but you got to always think about the new audience when you do a new thing. So I agree with Steve, that should have been there. But I do love the way they did this. The two actors played off each other brilliantly, dealing with this conflict. And by the time you get to the resolution, it feels earned, it feels organic, it feels legitimate. And I just applaud the heck out of them for the way they handled all that.
Okay. All right. So definitely different takes in terms of how we see the moral dilemma and how they dealt with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask you a question. I couldn't make that promise because I know he's going to do what he wants to do. Hey, he's absolutely going to do what he wants to do. The more you try to stop him, the more he's going to want to do it. My family tried to get me and all of my brothers down a particular career path. They finally succeeded with the third brother. Didn't work out for the first two. So he seems to really like what he's doing, my baby brother. So, it worked out. But, like, it wasted a lot of time and effort trying to get me and brother number two to do what they wanted us to do. Time and money and effort that could have been put into what we would have wanted to do, the career that we would have looked into. So can't make that promise. I know it doesn't work personally.
You got to guide, not push.
Yeah,
Right. You got a guide, not push. That's right. That's right. Okay. So our next major event is the death of Iceman. And what happens as soon as Iceman dies is that he's no longer able to protect Maverick from on high. So Maverick is immediately grounded. I liked being able to see real consequences. That he just hasn't been pushing the envelope all this time. It just nobody has anything to say. It was very specifically Iceman keeping the real heat off of him, which again, I don't know if we ever really had anybody like that for Kirk, but Kirk saved the planet. Sometimes Kirk saved reality over and over again. So they were willing to be like, well, okay, if you weren't exactly who you were, you wouldn't have gotten this outcome. So, we're going to demote you to be a captain and go call it a day. So, okay, so.
I think like Cartwright, who ended up being bad at the end, but those people seem to be looking out for Kirk's career. That was my reading of the whole situation. People like that, Starfleet operations and stuff. So.
And that's why Goose's death was so poignant and weighed so heavily on Maverick, the same way Spock's death weighed so heavily on Kirk. The best line in Star Trek 3 comes in the first 10 minutes. And Kirk says, "This time we paid for the party with our dearest blood." I love that line. I never forget that line because you can see his swashbuckling cavalier flower in the teeth. Life's just a party. I'm a kind of a maverick. But this time, death finally caught up with me, just not the way I thought. Didn't catch up with me, caught up with my brother, my best friend, that kind of thing. So anyway, so with Iceman gone, there's nobody to protect Maverick. So Cyclone immediately permanently grounds Maverick, and they come up with a new plan. And the new plan has a higher probability of them reaching the base and executing the attack, but they're going to get killed on the way out based on every simulation that they ran in terms of being able to get away from the air-to-ground missiles. It's just not enough time, not enough space, not enough speed, not enough anything. So what does Maverick do? He says, you can do it if we do it this way. And he shows them it can be done. But I'm like, how do you even have any breath in your lungs left after that little trick? I'm watching it. I'm like, but anyway, so of course he proves that, if you have superhuman reflexes and everything, if you're basically Hal Jordan, you can do it. So now all of a sudden he's a flight commander of the mission again. Okay.
Real quick, I will say that it's really incredible the way they really do it, which is they learn these techniques. So it's a learned skill.
The Hicks maneuver?
Yeah, that will keep the blood, forces the blood to the brain and keeps the blood oxygenated in the brain. So
I don't know if you're aware, like I'm sure Nim knows, but like Tom wanted the actors and himself to actually be flying in these planes. So it's not CGI. When you see them in the cockpit, they're in a plane. And one of the great things you see Tom doing is you see him doing the Hicks maneuver. When he's doing all this, you hear him making this particular noise. He's like, chick, chick, chick. And he's forcing the blood up. Like if you strain really hard to make your face turn red like when you're a kid, it's keeping that blood from like cooling in your extremities.
Yeah.
Fantastic to see that detail on screen.
And that's what happens to the one guy when he passes out. So when the guy goes up there, he wasn't keeping the blood up there. And so that's why he blacked out because the blood had all drained out of his brain. And so not blood was flowing, oxygen was flowing to his brain. And
even the flight suits you have are built to compress your legs to try and keep the blood in the core of your body and beyond.
Yeah, but it's a skill that they learn. It's really pretty impressive. You have to have really good core strength, Yeah. So
all that training in addition to technology, G suits and things like this. I mean, they do a lot of work.
It is pretty impressive. So
I like the way they showed him getting the G lock too. Like he got the tunnel vision, then he was out.
Yeah,
some really nice details that you don't typically get in this type of movie.
Okay, so the next major event we get, and I really felt like they were kind of pushing it here, and it's still fun to watch. Let me mention the part that I think where the movie dragged, and that is that when he has his reunion with Iceman, I just felt like it kind of slowed the momentum, and I understood why you want to have Val Kilmer in it. I understand why you want to see a resolution to his character. So I got it. I just felt like so much of the energy of the movie kind of lagged a little bit, but maybe that was necessary to give a balance to the other stuff. It felt like just a little bit to me like it was dragging.
The mistake was like deciding for whatever reason. I guess he had throat cancer or something. Not letting him talk.
Mm-hmm.
The scene
Yeah.
would have played out so much better if they just had an actual conversation.
True.
Right.
True.
That all that typing and the like I'm spending 2 seconds looking at the words, giving the audience time to look at it, like that just grounded to a halt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think it could have been shorter as well in general. But
And it cheated Kilmer of being able to do more as an actor in this scene.
right.
And this is the only real scene he gets.
Yeah.
That's right. It felt a little bit like whenever Harrison Ford finally decides to stop being Indiana Jones. I don't know when that's going to be, but it felt like, like we had to say goodbye to somebody beloved, and we didn't really want to, because I think it's going to be really heavy when Harrison Ford does go, and no more Han, no more Indy from the original guy. I think that's going to be a heavy fan day. This felt a little bit like that to me.
I will say I did like the line like right at the end where Ice says, "Oh yeah, we all know who's number one, don't we?" And he said, and Tom is like, "Yeah, don't ruin the moments. This is a really great moment. Don't ruin it." That felt like their friendship.
Yeah.
So
it was nice to see what good friends they became too.
So they go on the mission. They succeed, but sure enough, the air-to-ground missiles, surface-to-air missiles, take them out. So Maverick sacrifices his jet to save Rooster, and he's forced to eject. Now, at that point, I really held my breath because I really thought they were going to kill Maverick. I went into this movie fully expecting the Maverick character to die.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I fully expected him to die because he's a blaze of glory type of character.
Yeah.
He's not a grow old gracefully, move off into the sunset, become an older man type of character. He's the kind of guy where he would pull an Apollo and let himself die in the ring before he would just sit down and grow old. So I fully expected when I saw that, I was like, oh man, this is it. I went into the movie expecting this to be the end of Maverick. So when that happened, I was like, oh man, this is it. And I got really sad. I was like, oh, I knew it was coming, but didn't want it to happen. So I was pleasantly surprised to find out that he actually did not croak. I was like, okay, great. But then when Rooster also disobeys orders and then they connect, I'm like, well, what are the chances? Number one. But number two, when they conspire to steal the plane to get him out of enemy territory, I was like, okay, we just entered a little bit of Archie Andrews, Riverdale, Saved by the Bell territory. Because
we should have expected it when they said, like, when they were describing the defenses of the base and they mentioned they had F-14s.
Yeah,
I should have seen that coming.
I was like, that's a cartoon plan because you basically said we're deep, in enemy territory. We're going to go in their base, in their fortified base. We're going to steal a plane, and it's an old plane to boot. But somehow we're both going to make it out, and they did. And I was like, okay. Still fun to watch, but I was like, it got a little Scooby-Dooish for me during that part.
See, I would have tried to steal the 5th gen fighter if I could find one, but no, it had to be the F-14 because we need to have that moment where Rooster knows what it's like to be Goose.
And it's like I will give them this. I thought they were going to start sending some sort of little Marine detachment to pick up Maverick. I did not think they were going to blast Rooster out of the air too. That was a pleasant surprise.
The one thing that gets me is, okay, they clearly had these attack helicopters. Okay, that's cool. Why did they not use it in the base defense? You don't see any other helicopters in the whole movie.
Oh well, I can answer that one. So
okay,
attack helicopters have almost no chance against a fast mover for a variety of different reasons. In fact, when I saw the attack helicopter going after Maverick, I was like, he's dead. The only way he was going to survive that is...
Can't they do the peekaboo maneuver like our Apaches do?
Oh, they could, but they would have to know beforehand. They're going to pop up, and they're still going to have to acquire a target, which would give the other... there's a whole host of things that would go on there. Now, if they had Apache longbow where they've got a radar that sticks up...
up above the rotors.
Yeah. But anyway...
I was thinking other kinds of helicopters that might be more useful for the particular mission. I'm sure they have to have some.
Yeah, if they knew, they could do it, but really, attack helicopters when they're in the air with jets are pretty, they're really kind of shooting ducks, and they do have some air-to-air missiles, but they're not super effective because really attack
I like
helicopters.
how they call this a rogue nation, but they're piloting Hind.
Yeah,
the Hind helicopters, like the Russian premier attack chopper.
Yeah, the purpose of attack helicopters is really to suppress troops and kill tanks. So that's really what they're used for. So in an environment with surface-to-air missiles or jets, with fighter jets, attack helicopters die really quickly. And that one I can really, when I was an air defense officer, we did train to shoot down, what we would call a fast mover, which is anything that's not an attack helicopter, so a fighter jet or even prop planes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But our main goal was to kill attack helicopters and scout helicopters in support of whatever force we were, attached to. So, so that's really what we trained on, because that's your best defense from the ground level against tanks is surface-to-air missiles, and that's where they really shine. Your average surface-to-air missile, like a Stinger, probably couldn't catch a lot of fighter jets, especially modern ones. So
right.
Anyway, now that I've bored you all, I'm sorry. So
that's all right. Yeah, that's all right. But Steve already kind of alluded to the next point, and that was that the other point I knew we had to have a is Rooster going to die like his father did moment. And I told you, I hate the whole crunch of Goose's neck when he dies. I hate the whole eject thing coming out the thing. How fast are you going when you eject? What's your miles per hour?
Well, like your first Mach is slightly over 750 miles an hour. So multiply that by how many Machs you're going. We've got birds that'll do Mach 3.
You got to get altitude and slow down though, because if you eject like that at that speed, you'll probably die.
Yeah, you definitely want some height for your chute to open.
I do know that safely. I think, and this is just off the top of my head, I think when you get fired out of there, they got to make sure that you clear the aircraft and any explosion. So I think that initial, propulsion that gets you out of there puts you a couple, 100, 150 feet up in the air. So a good 50 yards, you're blowing upwards.
Just barely enough. I have seen some aerobatic shows where a fighter jet did take a nosedive into a field and the pilot escaped, and the jet was low when the guy punched out. So it is possible.
Yeah.
So I knew that we were going to have a scene where it looks like there was a chance for Rooster to die like his father did. And I was cringing through that whole thing. I was like, oh, Lord, do we have to do this again? Do we have to hear that visceral crunch? Do we have to, I'm like...
That'd be a terrible film if they had killed his son. Like, nobody would... Like, that film wouldn't have made anything. The first guys in the box office would have been on their phone like, screw this film, man.
No, that's right. I'm like, if Joss Whedon had directed it, he would have done that. Yeah. So I'm so glad this was not a Whedon film, because that would have happened for real. So I'm like, okay, so we got the tease of the possible death, but it didn't really happen. So I was like, okay, great. So I was like, maybe there's a chance of a semi-happy ending. Maybe there's a chance of them pulling this out, even though they've got to fly out in the rust bucket F-14 spit and wire bubblegum help. I was like, okay, all right, because y'all should have been, homemade distilled toast a long time ago, but okay. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, okay, we're going for tension, but a happy ending. So I relaxed a little bit. So I said, okay, all right, well, now we've got a chance to actually get something out of this ending. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts basically on the whole shot down behind enemy lines, pulling off that escape in an old airplane kind of thing. Because like I said, it feels very Scooby-Doo-ish to me. But let me hear what you think. Start with Nims.
Yeah. First of all, it wouldn't have been one attack helicopter. It would have been many attack helicopters, many troop transport helicopters that would landing people, trying to find them.
Guys in APCs, guys on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, they would have all been looking for those pilots because and they wouldn't have been trying to kill them. They would have been trying to capture them for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And they would never have gotten near that base. The first thing that they would have been taught, from what I understand, I've never been through this training, but the first thing would have been taught would be, I think it's survival, evasion. So the next thing would be evasion. So they get the hell away from there as far away as they can and try and stay hidden, and then set up a way for search and rescue. So there's special ops teams. Since it's Navy, it'd probably be SEALs, but there might be a special rescue team that would come in and extract them. But they would have never gone back to there training wise. So that's just that. And then the whole thing where they kind of walked in, it's like, hey, look, there's conveniently an F-14 that's conveniently has a full ammunition, plus missiles that are, and it's configured and everything. And you get it started up and you get it down onto the runway. Nobody's shooting at you. Nobody's, it's like, okay.
And the airfield is unguarded.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, where did they all go? Are they all out looking for you? Then why didn't they find you? If they're not looking for you, why aren't they there repairing the airway? So yeah, it's very Scooby-Doo-ish. It is. It absolutely is. So
okay. All right. Good to know that's not just me. Yeah. Okay. Bracy, what do you think?
Yeah, I got to agree with Nim. I got to agree with you on this. My first thought is when we see Rooster get knocked down, he is how many thousands of yards away where he crashes or he punches out, and Tom goes, and we get this overhead shot of like these deep woods that Tom is running into. And the whole time I know there's people in vehicles coming looking for him. So again, they don't get away. Now, Maverick being Maverick, I don't discount the idea of his plan of going where you least expect the enemy, and that's circling back around to the base. But if you want to see how it really plays out, Owen Wilson did a film about a pilot who gets knocked down based on an actual story, and he does all the tactics Nim's talking about. He's talking about like, he's doing the evasion. He's trying to find an LZ where he can get extracted. Everything in that movie is still Hollywooded up, but it's still as accurate as I think you're going to get in a movie setting. And it's really good showing what the pilot has to go through to survive long enough to get picked up by friendly forces.
And
so
I will say,
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I will say this. I know about the Air Force one, and I think Navy does a similar, or they go to the Air Force school. The training is really intense. I mean, they put them through actual physical torture.
My drill sergeants went through POW training, and they told me what hell that was.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like they can't kid around because they got to prepare you for what's coming.
Yeah.
So and then on top of that, so he's run, thousands and thousands of yards to catch up with the Rooster, and then they've got to go back to the base while people are looking for them, and somehow they evade. Don't know how, because I expect anybody who's got the kind of gear they've got probably have some thermal sensors. They can just like, heat signature over there. Let's go get them. It's not that hard. It's a IR equipment, thermal sensors. That's pretty standard if you've got a base that kitted out. So it's not going to happen. I will say. When they actually get into the base, one thing that I think does work is they are very casual going in and running where they feel like it's appropriate, because the way you ever get away with anything, because I was young once and I did stupid stuff too, is you act like that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and you won't get a glance. So that's the only thing that rung true out of that whole thing, as fun and exciting as it was.
Hey, he could always hide him underneath his coat and sneak him out. Because we know that'll work. Okay, Steve, what do you think about the Scooby-Doo escape plan?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, everything is clearly engineered so that you have these two people on the ground in the F-14, hashing out their differences while they're, trying to make their grand escape. I mean, it's silly. That having been said, this is another example that we talked about where the goodwill that has been built for the majority of the movie is what sells this.
Yes. Because
you care so much about these characters, because you care so much about what's going on, because you really want these characters to win. You're just willing, okay, this is ridiculous, but I'm willing to go along with this because it is so much fun to watch it. And because we have that goodwill that's built. So this is one of those cases where, is it silly? Yes. Is it ridiculous? Does it make any sense? No. It makes absolutely no sense that this thing is unguarded. There should have been at least like a couple of guards, in front of the plane for Mav and Rooster to beat up and take their uniforms or something and get out of there. No. We don't even get that. It just happens to be fully fueled, fully armed, and fully ready to fly, and nobody's there. Yeah, no, that's nonsense. I do agree with Jeff. Huh?
No, go ahead.
Agree with. Yeah, no, I was going to say I do agree with Jeff that I do think that going into the base is in character for Maverick. It is something that doesn't make sense for anybody else. But I mean, what is Maverick? He's a risk taker. He's all about I'm going to take this huge risk and get this reward. And because he's so bold and audacious about it, he often gets away with it. That's the kind of thing that it's like, okay, for this character, I am willing to let that go. And also because, it's a kind of over-the-top Maverick thing, that is enjoyable to watch. So it's like, okay, I'm willing to grant the suspension of disbelief, knowing that this is ridiculous, knowing that this would not happen the way that it's been presented, because it's like the end result and what we get out of it, feels good to watch. So it's like, okay, I'm willing to let that go, but this is ridiculous.
You know what occurred to me watching this? I mean, it was entertaining as all hell. So I have to give that to it, But it's reminded me of the ending of Iron Eagle, where he lands to get Louis Gossett Jr. and he gets out of the plane and the whole. And I'm just like,
I was thinking that same thing watching this.
Yeah,
they're doing the Iron Eagle, man.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie. That is the '80s.
I did, but I've forgotten so much of it.
If you want to see what it takes to steal a plane off a base, watch Clint Eastwood and Firefox.
Oh yeah,
they think this is like Grand Theft Auto. It's like, no way.
Firefox was way back for that one. Wow. But it was great. No, it was great.
What was that? What was the helicopter version? Was it Blue Thunder or something?
Blue Thunder, yeah. I really like Blue Thunder too.
That was
Blue
good.
Thunder was great.
So like I said, we almost get the we're going to lose the Rooster moment. Then he can't eject, and it was played masterfully because the tension stays. And then all of a sudden, we see that Hangman arrives and shoots down that final bogey, and then they're able to come back as heroes, and everybody's happy. And it's another one of those situations where because Kirk does it all the time, all the laws and the protocol that you broke on the way to the victory, we're just going to let that slide because you won. So since you won, we're going to cheer and everybody's all good. We're going to high five and fist bump and all that stuff you shouldn't have did. We're just going to end.
Hey, DT, can I ask a question real quick to Jeff?
Go.
Hey, Jeff, in the military, does the military let you slide when you break all the rules and everything, even though you won?
No. Doesn't matter what, you could save 150 guys, and they're like, "That's great. We're going to give you this medal. All right, now we got to take you to the stockade."
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly how it works.
I mean, and Cyclone even says this. It's like, I should put you all in jail, but it's like you're the only guy who can lead this squadron, so I'm just going to let you get away with it.
No good deed goes
unpunished.
Never happened.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Good old movie logic.
Yeah, that's right, because that happens all the time. It's happened in some of my favorite films where the protagonist is falsely accused. So they break ridiculous amounts of laws to try to prove their innocence. And once they do, all the crimes they committed trying to prove they were innocent of the original accusation is just like, we'll just let it go. I'm
do you think that's an American thing, though? Because we do that with people like, Dirty Harry or, all the cop movies.
It's a cultural thing. I'd say it's a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing, but
because like we've got that cowboy spirit here in America. That's kind of what we're known for. That's how the country was founded. And just speaking of which, Nim, have you ever been dismissed from an officer and not saluted on your way out the door? He just walks out on Ed Harris.
No.
You did? Yeah, I was about to say, like, you've got to salute, and you don't get to go till he salutes you back, and then you drop yours and you leave. So I was like, man, he's still breaking protocol. Ed Harris don't care. I was waiting for Ed Harris to jump on him because he's being real hard ass about everything.
Yeah, especially a hard ass like that. If it was somebody else, they might let it slide, but not that character.
Not that guy.
So, I mean, it's why we like Batman and Wolverine so much, because they very much are outside of the law. They very much live by their own code. They very much do things that people wish they could do. and more, straight-laced heroes that try to work within the law. But like Batman said,
It's cathartic for us.
We've always been criminals. We have to be criminals. So his famous, Dark Knight lines. So finally, we got the heroes welcome, and then Cruz reunites. Now, I have never felt more Hal and Carol than I did at the end of this film. Like, y'all been together and y'all love each other, and the kid has grown up. Y'all still ain't married. But okay. So I guess you're going to fly off in the sunset, and God knows to what, because, Hal Jordan is not the Marion type, and neither is Maverick. Pete Maverick Mitchell is not that type.
Yeah.
So I never felt more like that was yet another Green Lantern ending that we're seeing, like, yeah, I love you, and we've been together so long.
Good night.
Good night. I didn't even, recognize the kid when I saw her.
Yeah. Well, not only that, they left the kid in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Because Rooster took off. So.
Yeah, but Jeff said it just.
I miss that.
It's the cowboy nature of American culture, because we got to have somebody riding off into the sunset, and in this case, it was literal. It was literally somebody flying off into the sunset. We have to have that, or it doesn't feel like a real American ending. So again, that's another one. We just gotta have to let it slide, because what else was going to happen? So overall, like I said, nitpicks aside, I really, really enjoyed this film. I really, really enjoyed the fact that it respected the source material, that it didn't feel the need to elevate any characters at the expense of bashing others, but the conflicts and the tension. Now, the resolutions weren't real, and the consequences and the physics and the logistics, were kind of like Batman physics. But the tension, the mental, emotional, and most importantly, the moral tension was very, very real and very, very human.
One thing I will say for this movie's credit as well is, though, we pointed out some inconsistencies from a military standpoint, some of them, but there's some stuff in here, like I was talking about the DOD stuff and the drone stuff, which is real life, but even some little cultural stuff that's in there, which could be in there unless they have people who have been in the Navy writing the script. Specifically, like the moment where
they always get consultants for something that know it's going to be like a good rah-rah America military film.
Well, but I was thinking like the moment where they're out sailing and he doesn't know anything about sailing.
Mm-hmm.
Naval aviators give people who drive cans, that's what they call the ships, stick all the time, because the real Navy is what they're doing. That's the exciting part. Meanwhile, the people that drive cans, give the that
happens across all the branches, man. Like, we're always giving each other crap. Like, oh, you airborne guys, you jump out of a perfectly good plane. It was like,
yes,
they called all us grunts legs. The flyboys, the squids. There's just this good nature, kind of brotherly ribbing. I
always used to call all the 11 Bravos legs and said, why would I walk to work when I can get on an APC and ride? So it's like, but so those little things, and it's just those little stuff that rings true, and it really is true. It's like, there's just because he's in the Navy doesn't mean he knows how to sail. So which is funny when you say it, but it's true. So I appreciated that. Yeah.
But that same joke was played in A Few Good Men. He's like, Kathy, you're in the Navy. But anyway.
Yes.
So, but yeah, like I said, all in all, even with all the things we had to let slide, I thoroughly enjoyed the film. The tension was real. The moral dilemmas were real. The relationships were real. Miles Teller nails the Rooster character. It looks like
he does.
Goose spit him out, And I really wish, although I understand Meg Ryan's character had to die to make the movie work, I actually was kind of looking forward to seeing her until they explained that she passed. I was like, okay, but I understand. So, like I said, all in all, I really don't have any complaints. It's just such fun to watch a film that, who said it? Bracy or Nims, that was 80s, but not 80s?
That was Bracy.
Yeah. It was 80s in its feel good, in its setups, and its resolutions, and its Wile E. Coyote physics, but it was very, very human, and therefore very, very relatable in today's time. But I will say this on the way out of this review, and I know it might sound funny, but it's honestly how I felt. it was, in fact, so devoid of identity politics until it was jarring. I didn't realize how beset and how what's the word I want? How the barrage of identity politics. I didn't realize
Saturated.
how
saturated.
how it had saturated the atmosphere and affected me or whatever until I watched this movie, and it was so free of that until it was jarring. I was like, wow.
To the point where China tried to force the studio to remove the Singapore patch off of Maverick's flight jacket. Not only did they not do it, they gave you a close-up of it right at the beginning of the movie.
I think it was altered. There's an altered cut for China.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, they did a little digital hoo-ha for China.
Digital hoo-ha. So yeah.
Another Bracy quote.
Yeah. I don't want to know what a digital hoo-ha is. Oh, maybe I do. I don't know.
Okay, we're not going there. We're not going there right now. Okay.
It involves flippity poo.
Because I know how y'all get. I know how y'all get. So anyway,
yeah, just us.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the film. Highly recommended.
The eye bleach.
DT recommended. DT recommended. Sloppy spoiler recommended. Definitely check it out. It's one of those things that you'll want to own on DVD and Blu-ray, and bring it out and relive the nostalgia of it, yet the freshness of it.
One quick question.
Uh-huh.
One quick question for you guys. Do you ever figure out the time frame though? I was trying to figure it out. It was like, was Rooster supposed to be the kid sitting on the piano, which would make him about 40 or 38, 39? Or was
that was supposed to be Goose's son. Okay. But like the time scale is wrong. It's not set in today. It can't be.
Well, it might be if
either there they just don't care.
I could see a 38 or 39-year-old lieutenant in the Navy if
he was set back a few years.
If he was set back a few years. So I guess it's theoretically possible.
His application was blocked, yes.
Yeah, he was set back 4 years, but the actor doesn't look that old.
No, yeah. I was just trying to figure that out in my head, and that's just me overthinking.
But that also points to the film's relative timelessness.
Yeah.
That anytime that happened in this century, we would accept that. So that's another thing I thought that was very wise of them, because when you root something so strongly in the zeitgeist of the time it's written, it'll be funny or cool or whatever when it hits during that time, and then it will very quickly become dated when the next set of slang comes in.
Actually, it is slightly dated because they do mention the F-35s. That's a current plane.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you'd have to be one of us to pick up on that.
It's not something normies would know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And the F-35's been around for a little bit, so not a super
that
long time. Yeah, not a super long, but yeah, that's a whole other discussion. So.
All right. Any final thoughts from a co-host?
No, it was nice to sit down and watch a movie that, I picked it apart a little bit just for fun, but it was enjoyable. I left the movie. I had some feels. I felt good about it, and I enjoyed my experience watching the film. So, and I was worried. Yeah. I was really worried about sitting down and watching the movie.
This is a movie that is very good at making you feel good about the characters, about the people in it, and about what's going on. And because of that, it's like there's a lot of stuff that you kind of have to, let go. But because you love this movie so much, and you love these people so much, and because you love these actors so much, it's like, I really don't care that, that Rooster is too old. I don't care.
Yeah.
I would only do, I mentioned the Val Kilmer scene and what I would change there. I would only make one other change that would really just kind of put it in that 80s, 90s sort of box. And, because they made the point several times, it's not the plane, it's not the technology, it's the man in the cockpit. And when Maverick is having that dogfight in the trench, I would have had him miss that last shot, and he defeats the superior plane by being the better pilot and causing the other pilot to crash. And then later on, like a hangman has to save him. And that's just like a little thing I would have wanted because, Maverick is the best pilot. And so that would have just reinforced that whole thing for me. But other than that, I still thought the movie was wonderful. It was nostalgic, and yet it was also appealingly fresh in the fact that it didn't get into like a lot of the things the media's been just inundating us with lately. It was a well thought out continuation of a previous film series or a film, and I have a lot of respect for the fact that they worked very hard to make this film what it is. And I don't know how much of that is crews and how much of that is the overall production, but for whoever out there made sure this film is what it is, thank you.
Yeah, my 1 sentence review would be, this movie was so much fun, but that by the end I had Eagly on my shoulder and I was singing the Team America theme song. So.
I will say for Tom Cruise, this is a guy who has a scary ability to pick good scripts. I don't know how he does it. I mean, yeah, he's had a few clunkers too, but
Sure.
By and large, like a lot of his genre films, the Mission Impossible films, stuff like Oblivion, Edge of Tomorrow,
most of his career is stellar.
Yeah. I mean, so much of these movies they are well made.
Minority Report.
Minority, yeah.
I still like it because
I don't know what it is in the water. I don't know if it's his agent. I don't know if it's him. But I mean, this is a guy who makes generally good movies, and there are not many actors who have the track record that Cruise does. And
we've seen his agent in Tropic Thunder.
Now there's a movie for you. There's
a movie for you. All right. On that note, we're going to call it. I want to thank my co-host. Thank you so much, Nims.
Absolutely. Been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Bracy.
Thank you for allowing me to reveal this film because it has fulfilled my need for speed.
Ooh,
somebody had to say it. Thank you so much, Steve.
God damn it, Maverick! The only thing I miss is James Tolkan. But yeah, as far as this movie goes, go see it. It's been great to finally watch a good movie and cover a good movie on this show because it's been a while since we've done that. So it's always nice to have these moments.
He said it's been a while. All right. Thank you so much for those of you that watched us live. Thank you for those of you that are.
I got one more line. One more line before we go.
Go ahead.
Ready?
Uh-huh.
Go Army, beat Navy. All right.
Thanks so much to those of you that are watching on the replay. Don't forget to check out Comic Crusaders, website, our YouTube channel, because we literally have something for everybody. Retro stuff, creative stuff, up-and-coming artists, contemporary reviews. Okay, so definitely check out our other offerings. And me and this crew will see you next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.
Ring Cross Press, Blood World.
Yeah.